do our project, how we coordinate this or we do that. And then, if you like it, you register here. This is the registration form. This is an example of a registration form. And as you can see, to reply to your question, you choose the project. And in this case, for example, I suppose that you can choose the next European Social Forum. Let's see if it's already there. So you write here. Okay. Oh, sorry. This is the form and the explanation. Okay. No, this is the explanation to fill in the form. There. This is the registration. Well, as the IT people say, please read the instructions. Read the manual, okay? First, which is what okay, so you put your email there, you write your email address again, your last name, your first name. Make sure that all the red things are always there, that you're not missing. You can miss the zip code, but not the city. And then you see that, to reply to your question before I explain everything else, you can sign in for Transtrad, which is our project for translators. And perhaps I should have started there. We are translators and interpreters, and we always have been, so that's something you can do. And there you receive the information, there you work on the lexicons, and then there you receive the information of the bells. Now what I see here is that this is the generic form, and normally when you fill it in, they ask you, there's another one of these things, and they ask you the project you want to participate in, which in this case would be the European Social Forum or whatever, and you just tick it. Okay? For now, as they're not working on this yet, you would have to subscribe to that one. But don't worry, you won't be called for any old project. You have to sign in for it, and you only receive emails if you want to do that project. Okay. So now I suppose that there will be a lot of translations for the next European Social Forum. And another important thing is this. You put your 1A interpretation, which in my case, for example, would be Spanish. Not there, but it's Español. Ah, sí, aquí. Okay. And if you're completely bilingual, you might want to put a 2A interpretation, or if you can do interpreting into another language other than your own, you can put it also in 2A. But if you're a professional interpreter, you can do it into another language. And there, if I find it, there's another option where you put whether you're a professional interpreter or a beginner. There you go. See, for example, simultaneous. If it's the first time you've done it, you put first experience. And if you've done consecutive more often, you put occasional. If you do it every day, you put professional. See what I mean? And those of you who have finished translation and interpreting, like a whole degree, a whole course, or a master's, can put experienced. That's what we usually recommend you to do, because you've been doing it for a whole year at least. Okay? Any other questions?
I just want to say that I was there in Malmo. I was one of the volunteers.
Yeah, tell us about your experience.
I mean, my case was different because I'm from the Basque country, in the north of Spain, but I lived for almost 2 years in Brazil. And I went to the World Social Forum in Porto Alegre in 2003 and in 2005. Now, Porto Alegre was a bit different. And I was there as an interpreter, but in 2003 everything was starting. It was kind of a bit disorganized, but I understand that in 2005 things were a bit better.
It has improved over the years, yes.
Malmo was for me the first European Social Forum. I traveled from Dublin to Malmo, actually to Copenhagen, and then there's a train. I stayed there with a very nice Swedish girl. I didn't need to pay for accommodation, and then I was there mainly interpreting, as I say, into Spanish. I love Latin America. This means that most of the talks were about indigenous people or Latin American politics.
The subjects
or like,
interesting.
obviously you could, what happens is that they give you a timetable, okay? And normally you can choose, but sometimes you can exchange with other people. I'm going to compare, I have a bit of a problem there, and I'll tell you why. I speak Basque, but Basque is not my mother tongue. And I wrote down 12 Basque. Then they asked me, could you interpret into Basque? And I say, okay, I can interpret into Spanish, and with a bit difficulty, but definitely not into Basque.
If you have trouble filling it in, just send us an email and we'll help you with the filling in of language 1A, 2B and everything.
I
know
thought,
it's a bit complicated.
you know what happened? I thought it would be useful for me to write on Basque, and then I wrote Basque. And then
We are
finally,
in need of Basque speakers.
yeah, but
yes.
finally there's another Basque interpreter, and then I say okay, and then I used it into Spanish. And what else? I know there was this issue about paying a bit late. In my case, it was great. Only took, I think it was just maybe
It's
a
just
week.
that the organization went bankrupt, so they took
Yeah.
a long time to reimburse people.
But in my case, I mean, I think that sometimes I believe in activism, and I believe in volunteer interpreters and translators, and I think this is something you do not only for yourself, for other people, and you learn about other issues. For example, I mean, not only indigenous people, but anything else to do with maybe politics or human rights, and I think it's a good experience. Now, I have to say that in Malmo, some of the booths didn't work.
Yes.
Because I think it was to do with Alice, no, this.
What happened there was that the European Social Forum went bankrupt, as you know, and they didn't want to pay for the Alice booths. Alice is like regular booths, but free software, so they are not exactly the same. And so they paid for the booths. They actually bought the booths and had them there, but they didn't pay the technicians to put them together. So it was all a bit chaotic. We ended up doing more consecutive than simultaneous, which was terrible for me because I had been training a few people in simultaneous for 10 days intensively. Imagine my face when I saw that some of the booths didn't work. But all the booths worked. I can say it. I worked in a few booths there and they were okay. But many didn't work, so yeah.
What else? And I know, okay, you said different fields. I was in Kenya in 2007 at the World
How
Social.
did that go?
Okay, what happened was that Bagels was not involved. I don't know why, but
Because when they call us late for something, and there's no physical time to organize it, and we know it's going to be terrible because we don't have enough volunteers, enough people, there is no means, then we say no. Try to find other volunteer professionals in the country, or find a different solution, because otherwise, you know, we do our best in those occasions, we end up being blamed if it doesn't work, which is a little what happened in Malmo.
now, and what happened in Kenya is that there was actually she's from here, she's from Ireland. Her name is Judith, but she lives in France, and she was one of the organizers.
Hitchman.
Yeah.
Hitchman.
And there was just a few, like a local committee, and what they did was they hired mostly, I mean, in Kenya there are two indigenous languages, Swahili and Kikuyu. That means that they hire interpreters for both languages. And then they call a few people in Europe, and they pay some of the expenses. In my case, I didn't get paid for my flight, just for my accommodation and daily allowances. What happened in Kenya is that there was a shortage of English native interpreters, and they hired too many local interpreters. And yeah, it was one thing.
It's always very tricky. I mean, when you see it from the outside, you think it's like organizing a conference or something like that, and it's absolutely 10 times worse. It's not. You don't have the means, you don't have the money, you don't have the resources. You ask for a pen, and you can't have it. You ask for cookies for your break, and you can't have it. So it is rather tough. I'm not lying to anybody, okay? It's not an easy thing to do. You will suffer sometimes, and others it will be a great experience.